So, welcome everyone. Kiana, did you want to do the honors of welcoming everyone and doing the housekeeping?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year to everyone that I have not spoken to or exchanged an email with. It is that time of year again for the annual sheltered pit count and housing inventory reporting we do for HUD. We are excited this year. We have a new team of staff that are going to be spearheading and working on Pit and HIC for Detroit for 2022. Um, so we're excited to just meet you. I think we'll do our introductions now, and then one of the things that we're going to ask for you to do is to just introduce yourself because we have such a large group. Introduce yourself in the chat and just your name, agency, and the role that you play, and also indicate whether if you're new to doing point in time and housing inventory data gathering, or if you are um, not new to doing point in time and data gathering for the housing inventory chart. That will be helpful for us as we have quite a few things that have to be done and making sure we are in tune with our folks that this is their first time dealing with sheltered pit and housing inventory. Um, and so wanting to be cognizant of that as we do have quite a few new people that have joined the COC at your agencies as well. So I am Kiana Harrison. I am currently the HMIS manager for HAN's HMIS team.
And I'm
And
Denise, and I'm Denise Gashton. I'm the HMIS reports administrator for the Homeless Action Network of Detroit. And Nona?
I'm Nona Ingram, HMIS System Administrator.
hey, thank you, HMIS team, for introducing yourselves. Housekeeping wise, this is an open format. I really recommend that if you have a question, type it in the chat or unmute yourself so we can hear your question live. It's very often that a question you may have is something that one of your counterparts or peers also has. And so as we answer those questions, everyone can hear, the answers and kind of vet if everything is clear or not. Next slide. Okay. So this year, same as all years, we will be providing you today with just kind of the instructions on the housing inventory and the sheltered pit. We also have a form that we have used in previous years for anybody that is providing emergency shelter or transitional housing that is not entering data in HMIS. Whether it's because it is potentially a DV project or it's a program that has not onboarded to the system. So there could be multiple reasons why folks are not entering data. We also will cover the important dates, which is the main thing. It's a lot happening between now and March, and you guys are going to be asked to do a lot. And so we want to make sure you are aware of all the dates, the deadlines, and the timeframes that we have carved out that are also fluid. As you know, in years past, we'll have one date set and we have to push it back because something has happened. There was glitches with this or glitches with that, but this is our plan. And these are the dates that we have carved out for you for this year. We also want you to be able to know where to find last year's data. The 2021 housing inventory is on the HAN website. You can look at that data either in the Tableau format, which is kind of visualized for you. Our wonderful Anita Posey does that for us every year. And then there is also the basic chart that many of you are used to seeing, and it has each program type at the bottom, and within each tab are the individual agencies and the bed and unit inventory you reported for 2021, as well as the number of clients that you had on the 2021 PIT night. So that data can be found, and I really recommend that you look at last year's housing inventory and PIT numbers as you're planning for this year, especially some of you that have indicated you're not new to the CLC, but you are new to PIT and HIC. Getting with your coworkers and talking with individuals who have done this before and reviewing last year's data can be really helpful. And some of the key terms, just so you're aware, as we use these acronyms all the time, and sometimes don't realize that everyone does not always know what they mean. These are the program types as well as the lingo that we use for short. HIC is housing inventory chart, PIT is point in time, and PIT encompasses the shelter count, which we are covering today, and the unsheltered count, which we have not done since 2000 and full unsheltered count since 2018. We did a next day interview count in 2019, the year of the polar vortex, but we are going back out on the streets this year in 2022 for unsheltered count. And many of you have been involved with all of the planning and the volunteering that is occurring right now as we speak for the unsheltered count. Essentially what happens is the data we gather on the unsheltered PIT night, which is this Wednesday, coupled with the shelter count data that we gather from you guys, is all banded together for our total point in time count. And then we enter that data into HUD's portal later on this quarter. PSH, TH, rapid rehousing, and safe haven are also the other required program types that need to participate in the PIT as well as the HIC. All right, so this is just a brief overview of the timeline. We're going to cover this a couple of ways today. We're going to kind of keep going over it to kind of just, give you an opportunity to start looking at these dates. So the PIT date this year is Wednesday, the 26th. We're going to have the Woo Food survey link out on Monday, the 31st. You will have 10 days to complete your housing inventory survey. In that housing inventory survey, you are indicating your maximum beds as well as who was in your program on the night of the PIT. There is also information related to your funding that we asked for, as well as information related to your configuration in your programs. For example, if you are a warming center or if you are seasonal versus year-round, things of that nature are also asked. If your address has changed, anything like that, like the contact people who should be the folks we're talking to about your PIT and HIC data, that you will have an opportunity to update as well, because I know some programs have had some movement and different configurations over the last time since we've done this. We will start the signups on Valentine's Day. That is our gift to you. Happy free Valentine's. And on the 14th, you can start to sign up for your check-in meetings. We are going to continue that tradition of having the one-to-one meeting. That one-to-one meeting is kind of your opportunity to go over the data that you've not only sent to Denise and Nona, but that you also submitted in your survey, and just to finalize the numbers. The meetings will not start until after the holiday. I believe that President's Day is the 21st. And so the meetings will start to take place between February 22nd all the way up to March 11th. So you will receive a link to sign up for the length of time meeting that we kind of have determined is best fit for your agency. You may go under that time. Hopefully you won't go over that time. As in years past, we have a few extra dates out there in the event that folks schedule, now and then have to change it or modify it. There will be some extra dates available to plug in even after we close the sign up. Okay, so to complete the HIC survey, again, it's really important for you to look at the instruction document that we'll be going over later today, as well as doing your housing inventory chart on the survey. But again, to help with that survey, I really strongly encourage you to look at what you submitted for 2021. As well as some additional, like for rapid rehousing, the housing move-in date audit report is going to be your Bible for knowing what you need to report for 2022 as in years past, as well as for HUD funded agencies, your contracted beds. We have that spreadsheet that we have shared in the past that Amanda prepares for us that just kind of has your bed count as far as your maximum beds based on your HUD contracts in the most recent competition. So we will have that as well available for anyone that is CLC funded. So that would be for CLC funded transitional housing, permanent housing, PSH and or rapid rehousing. We also, Nona has reached out to the GPD veteran VA liaisons to also gather that information for GPD sites to make sure we are aware of what you are contracted for and just make sure that that aligns with what you are reporting. And if it doesn't align, having a discussion about why before we finalize the number. So those are just some other examples of things that will also help you with trying to figure out your numbers. With emergency shelter, I will say there have been some recent conversations. I encourage you to look at your MDHHS contracts, your scopes that you have provided to the city. And again, what you have been reporting at in the previous housing inventories to kind of figure out what that number is going to be. I know those funders have been in touch with you all as well as with us, trying to get on the same page about the numbers that shelters are reporting as what is available. But again, we do know, obviously, the pandemic is still impacting us significantly here in Detroit. And so we will have that question on the HIC again this year in relationship to your bed count you're reporting for January, if in fact that bed count is impacted by COVID and if it is temporary or if it is permanent. So that question we added last year for emergency shelters and transitional housing and safe haven projects. And so it will also still be there this year for you to answer when you complete your survey.
All right. So again, I'm Denise Gostin, and I'll be handling the shelter pit. And here you'll see the shelter point in time timeline. Today is the day that you'll receive information on the APR for the required pit data cleanup. That includes the job aid that you'll go through and just make sure you run the APR and clean up any necessary data that needs to be cleaned up. Also, make sure that you exit any client that needs to be exited prior to the point in time count, as well as enter any client that needs to be entered for the point in time count. And that goes for the ES&T providers that is actually entering into HMIS. The next date here for the non-HMIS, you want to, you'll be receiving the PIT count form and the instruction packet by email from Nona. And then for February 7th, the final APR is going to be due to me. So you want to make sure, again, that everything is cleaned up. You'll have a chance after the 7th to clean it up, but you want to make sure you get as much as you can done before the 7th. For the non-HMIS providers, you'll be completing the PIT count form, and it'll be due to Nona by email on that date. And then from the 14th through the 21st, you'll have to sign up for the HIC and PIT check-in meetings at the signup.com link that we'll be sending out. And then from the 22nd to the 11th, you'll have to attend the HIC and PIT meetings, and then confirm the data that needs to be submitted into HDX. So confirming your PIT count for HMIS for the ESNTH providers. So immediately following the PIT, which is 126 this Wednesday, you want to run your APR, and then we're going to provide that job aid for you. Again, as I said before. Also, you're going to want to compare the list to your shelter point list, which is why I said earlier, you want to enter the clients that need to be entered and make sure the ones that's exited need to be, go ahead and exit them. So you want to make sure and value cell 5A on that APR that it matches your shelter point list. And then you want to address all the errors that appear in sections 5A, 6A, 6B, 6D, and 14B. And again, we'll provide that. So you want to email that to me no later than February 7th. And I also wanted to piggyback on what Kiana said earlier about us being in conversation with the ES funders, which is City of Detroit and MDHHS. We are in conversation with them, and we want to make sure that all of the beds that you guys have are being accounted for. They are moving towards basically having you guys adhere to what was written in your grant. So if you wrote that you had 50 beds in your grant, they're gonna, move towards having you guys actually have those 50 beds in shelter. So if you're not the person that takes care of that on this meeting, you need to, relay that to the director or whatever. They are moving towards that. Also, we have quarterly bedding unit inventory check-ins. That's fine, and you can, report the changes there. However, you want to report changes anytime it happens in your bed so that we can capture it sooner rather than later. Also, if you notice that when you're going in and looking at your bed count in HMIS, that there's not enough beds or too many beds, again, you want to report that to us as soon as you find out. Okay, Nona? No, Kiana, is Nona on?
I was talking this whole time and my mic was muted. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nona. Again, I'll be working with Denise on this year's PIT. This information is intended for our DV providers and non-HMIS users. Please be on the lookout after this meeting for an email from myself that will include the PIT form and the PIT instructions packet that'll be going out following this presentation. On the night of the PIT, please fill out the form with a response from each client and any household members present currently served by your program. And this form can be completed electronically in Excel. And please be sure to return your completed forms to me via email no later than Monday, February 7th. And my email is provided here. This is back to you, Kiana, for the housing movement date.
Thank you, Nona and Denise. So for rapid rehousing and PSH providers, we are asking that you follow the same process that you have followed in the past in relationship to trying to figure out who should be included in the PIT count and the housing inventory. And when I say who should be included, this is what I mean. For an example, the way that our system works, here in Detroit, obviously clients can be referred to permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing while they are still on the street and or in shelter and at times in transitional housing. In that case, those individuals, though they have been referred and entered into your programs, would not be part of your PIT count if you are a PSH and rapid rehousing provider, because if they are an emergency shelter, transitional housing, or safe haven, they will be counted in those programs. We do not count street outreach in the housing inventory. It is only the clients that have moved into housing that you are counting for the point in time count. And that is why the housing move-in date, data cleanup is important for PIT. What's going to happen, because you guys are already doing the quarterly housing move-in date data cleanup with Shanna, is that one time a year, you're actually ahead of her with your cleanup, or it's kind of serving two purposes, right? You're already going to be looking at this data for your PIT and HIC data. She is going to be reaching out likely towards the end of this month, saying, hey, here are your reports. Let's get this cleaned up. And that is going to be extremely helpful for you. By the time you have your one-to-one meetings, you would have already gone through the housing move-in date exercise with Shanna, which will be the number that we're looking for January 26th. So I encourage you to still look at your data, make sure that the thing that we cannot control with PSH and rapid rehousing is if there are clients you are serving and you have not entered them in HMIS, please enter them in HMIS now. We really need to get an accurate count. We do not, we won't know until it comes up and you're looking at your rental assistance, payments, and you got more people listed there than you have in HMIS, and that gap is going to need to be entered in the system. In years past, we've looked at referral reports to see how many people were referred to you, to then try to determine, if based on who you said you accepted, did you enter all those clients? And I feel like we're past that stage now, and we pretty much have been getting really good data from you guys for our quarterly housing move-in date cleanup. So I'm just asking that you do your due diligence and make sure every single person that you have been referred, that you intend on serving, and for sure that you have housed and are paying rent on, and their children, if it's a family, are entered in HMIS. That is going to really help with this process versus finding out about it at our one-to-one meeting, that you still have many, many clients to enter into the system. We just want to try to avoid that at all costs possible. And this is just a sample of where that housing move-in day audit report is located. It has not moved. Art is changing soon, as many of you have seen, and we're happy about it. It's being upgraded to a new model, and some of you we will be reaching out to. This is a sidebar to test out the new art, but it is still the same art today. So this is where the report is located, and you will be able to run this report. We had some major issues with art in the last week and a half. A major thing broke when they did some upgrading, but that has now been resolved. I believe it was resolved Thursday or Friday last week. Please reach out to the help desk. If you have to text us, call us, email us, do whatever you can to reach us immediately if you find that art is not working or your reports are coming back weird or just failing. Sometimes we don't know until we know that the system is down. You guys are in the system at the client level far more than we are. And you know what's happening a lot of times before we know what is going on in the system. So we appreciate you, as always, for reaching out as you do when things are broken. but this is a critical time. If something is broken for you, it's likely broken for everyone. And so we want to be able to address those things right away. Denise, before we go to the key contacts, are there any questions that we need to answer before we go into the instructions?
There's a question in chat from Katie. It says, are those included in the PIC count, those that are in case management only? For example, we paid in the past, but they have transitioned over to HCV, and we are helping with resources / support only.
So a couple of things there, which I did mention earlier. So I believe, yes, if they have moved into housing as of January 26th and they are not closed, they will be counted in the PIC count. We will clarify that if that is a different answer, but I believe yes. The other piece that we did not mention is for clients who are getting emergency housing vouchers. They are going to be separate and have their own line and own reporting that is required by those providers in HMIS, separate from the other rapid rehousing programs. HUD is wanting to capture EHV clients that have moved into housing that are still being served and not closed on the night of the pit this year. That is a new addition, as well as the hotel motel, which we'll be going over shortly. But yes, Katie, the answer to your question is yes, today. And I like to say that just because things change so much in our COC. Denise, can you make a note that we bump that up to the HUD sysadmin meeting that'll be next month, just in case. And we also can submit something to the AAQ. I'm pretty sure it's a yes, but we will double check. Right, and this is just a reminder of how to run the housing move-in date audit report for this year, just in case you guys haven't run it in a while, or you don't remember how to run it for the one point in time date. Here is an example of the dates that you need to enter into those prompts. Okay. We're going to transition over to the other materials, and all of these materials you will be receiving after this call so that you will have them. And we are also going to post things on our website as they become available, the different links to the surveys, as well as a reminder about the dates will be getting posted as well. Thank you. So this document you will receive in the materials. And again, you're going to probably get tired of seeing all of these dates, but we have included them ad nauseum so that you just don't forget. I encourage each and every one of you that are required to participate to just read through this document and make sure that you bring in the other individuals at your agency that are going to have to assist with either cleaning up data and reporting final numbers back to Denise and Nona, or being responsible for filling out the survey in WUFU, and or being responsible to come and join the one-to-one meeting to finalize your numbers for 2022. It could be a combination of folks that need to be involved. So again, here are the dates that we provided previously, and just want to make sure you know that the mandatory webinar today and the in-person meeting is required. We have to meet with every single person before we finalize the numbers. These are your numbers. They are not ours. We share in the burden of having to report these numbers annually to HUD. But at the end of the day, we cannot do this without you. And we need you at the table about, decisions about your agency and what you have to offer in relationship to your programs. I encourage you to have a single point person kind of sign up for your time slot with the one-to-one meetings, but I also at the same time want you to start having those conversations internally if it is going to be multiple folks that need to attend the meeting. Once you sign up for a slot, we will send you the calendar invite with the link to your meeting, which will likely be using Teams and or Zoom. We're going to have that in the survey this year when you sign up, so we kind of know which platform you prefer. And then that link and that invite can be sent to anybody in your agency that needs to attend. So that is kind of the process for this year. It's just easier for one person to sign up for the time slot. That way it doesn't get confusing around too many people signing up for the same slot from the same agency. And again, if you have any questions at all about any materials in this packet, you can reach out to me for HIC, and you can reach out to Denise and or Nona for sheltered pit items. For 2022, they have been pretty consistent with keeping things as it was for the most part for 2021. There is no longer, that kind of under construction. We no longer a distinction between, there is under construction, new inventory and current. Everything is current inventory. And they have kept that consistent. That changed last year, and that is still the way it is this year. This year, you are either HMIS participating or not. If you have a project that is both, like within one project has participating beds and non-participating beds, we have to capture that as two separate projects. So we would capture, program A, yep, this is entering data in HMIS, and program B, we are here in the COC and clients can come to this program, but we do not enter data. So that is the way that would be captured if that was the case. The project ID number must be included for all projects. On the HIC, so every single project that you operate has its own individual row in the housing inventory. And so for one program, it may be 3 projects, or you may just have one. We have agencies that have 25 projects. And so all of those projects, we have to account for every single one individually. So the only projects that do not kind of have this look at how many maximum beds they have for PIT in general. We do have to do it for LSA, but how many maximum beds they have versus how many people are in there on the night of the PIT are the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing beds and units that are occupied on the night of the count are what you have to report. Each client, including the household members that has an open entry on 1/26/22 and a housing move-in date on or before that date will be the PIT number that we will be looking for. And so some of you, especially with permanent supportive housing that is CLC funded, may find yourself overutilized or underutilized. You will have the opportunity in the survey to speak to why. Typically, an example of that is if you are servicing large families, you may have 40 beds, but you may, come up on the HIC with 75 people, being served in those 40 beds. And typically when programs are overutilized by over 100%, it's typically due to the size of the families that you end up serving, for that particular year. And so you would just simply state that in the comments, and then we submit that information directly to HUD. You only have to report discrepancies to us if you are under 65% utilized or over 105%. That is when we are looking for comments. Outside of that, if you're a little over or a little under, we don't necessarily report those comments to HUD. And some of the other information in here is related to the federal funding sources. It is critical. Whoever is going to fill out your survey, please get with your finance team, get with the director, get with the supervisors or the managers, and maybe that's yourself, right here on this call, and be clear about how your beds are funded. There are many times that multiple things have to be marked in the survey because you're multi-funded. The MDHHS funding is not there. It's not one of the HUD sources. However, we always have it as other. And so some of the others that show up in our COC are ESP, MDHHS funding, as well as any programs that have CDBG funding. We ask you to place that in the other because those two funding sources, though we have them here in Michigan, are not part of the HUD listed sources. But we every year we ask that you put that in the other, CDBG and MDHHS ESP. And so please continue to do that. Scroll down. Okay. Right here with the number of beds, and you scroll up just a little bit, please. Okay, thank you. With the number of beds and units. So for single programs, you don't have units. For the family programs, you do. There are times when you don't have a specific carve out, especially programs that serve singles and families within the same program. There are times when you don't have like 5 beds for singles and 15 for families. If you do not have a specific carve out for those types of programs, you can use the way it shakes out on the night of the PIT. So you can extrapolate those percentages to be what your kind of makeup is of your single and or family beds, the ratio of single versus family beds, if you don't already have a specific set amount. And so that has worked out for most programs over the years, and we will work with you to kind of finalize those numbers if you run into an issue and can't really figure out how many family beds you have versus single beds. If you have dedicated youth beds and veteran beds, you need to indicate that these are subsets of your total beds. So dedicated youth and dedicated veteran beds are subsets of your total bed. So if you have those, please indicate that after you kind of carve out your numbers. Please indicate of those numbers, do you have beds dedicated to youth or beds dedicated to veterans? The same for the chronic beds. They are a subset. They are not in addition to. So if you have 50 permanent supportive housing beds and all 50 are dedicated to chronics, then in that space, you will put 50. If you only have 80%, dedicated to chronics, then in that space, you would put 40. So that way we know of your beds, how many are dedicated to chronic. Some of your projects are all chronic. Some of your projects came under the NOFA where you over the years added chronic beds in different applications. And I believe right now we're at 98%. I'll double check that with Amanda, but I will have those numbers to share with you based on what you put in your most recent HUD application. And so if what you put in the survey doesn't match what you put in the application, then we'll have a discussion about it at your one-to-one meeting. But I do ask you to try to know what that is prior to filling out your survey. Seasonal programs. Please make sure with seasonal beds, you are stating your start and end dates, the very day that it started and the date it's slated to end. It's very important. Overflow beds. So overflow beds have kind of changed over the years. You can still report overflow beds. The thing with overflow beds and the housing inventory and PIT is that overflow beds are only relevant if they are being used. So I will give an example of a program with 20 beds. If the program has 20 beds and on the night of the PIT, there were 25 people in those 20 beds, you will either be overutilized, or if you have overflow beds in your program, then you can report how many of that 5 were served in your overflow beds. And maybe it was all of them. So you would have 20 year-round beds, 5 overflow beds, and you would be at 100% capacity. Now, say for that same project, instead of 5 overflow beds, you had 10. Well, I won't report 10 total overflow beds to make you look like you're under capacity. The overflow beds only are relevant if they are being used on the night of the PIT. If you don't offer overflow beds at your facility, then you don't need to even put it in there, especially if on the night of the PIT, you haven't even filled up your regular beds. You don't need to let us know, oh, and by the way, we've got 20 overflow beds, because we can't report it to HUD. It's good to know in relationship to things you do with CAM and maybe what you report to your funders for your funding, but it is not required for us to report to HUD unless those overflow beds are being used. Okay. And then it's just good to make sure for certain projects, we need to know if it's site-based, single site, or cluster or tenant-based scattered site. Some programs are we know what it is already. For shelter only, this should be consistent with your housing type, whether it's congregate or multiple sites. And then on the night of the PIT, the actual number of people in the program is the exact number that you're going to be confirming with Denise. So what we often see is you will put in the survey, something different than what you confirm with whomever is overseeing PIT in your APRs. And so that is where we want to just tighten up and make sure that we are reporting the same information. We're only going to report one number to HUD. And we're just asking that, you all are aware of what maybe your shelter team, say you're a program with multiple, project types, has reported to Denise before you plug that number into the survey. You just kind of got to get coordinated when reporting this data. Just some tips for permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. That is not part of the shelter PIT. However, you still have to report your PIT number, and the HMIS is your source, along with those internal tracking mechanisms, as many of you have rosters and billing rosters and whatnot that kind of help you track who you're servicing. And many of you have brought those to meetings to just kind of get that number straightened out. And we still encourage you to have some kind of internal controls, and know that every single person you're paying rent on is in HMIS. That is 100% your responsibility to do. There is just no way for us to be mind readers and know if you actually have clients that you may have made a mistake in and not put in the system. We are going to base it off the system. And do know that more so now than ever before, your funders have asked for this data. It's one big circle. There's no separation in any of this. What you're reporting to us is not a secret. You know, we publicly face this data on our website. What you put in your scopes is not a secret, and what's in your contracts with your funders is really not a secret anymore. We are having meetings and looking at all of these numbers at the same time, and it is not lining up. You know, not just yet, but I just want you to know that they are using this information. The city of Detroit, for example, has a huge boilerplate that they have to submit to HUD annually, a con plan that they submit, and they ask for the number of bed nights that were utilized for their programs they're funding. Well, they don't go and try to count up, you know, bed nights. They use the housing inventory and extrapolate that number for their con plan. So whatever you're putting in there, it is not in vain. Like, it is being used later on in different iterations of programs that normally, you know, you don't think about working together, but we do work together. And all the information is shared with each other. And we're just trying to get it straightened out, so that we're all on the same page around what is available in our COC and what isn't. Okay. The HDX automatically calculates your utilization, but it's very easy for you to calculate by doing the division with the number of people you had on the night of the pit versus the number of maximum beds that you have. And that is also something we can share with you when we do the summary and have your one-to-one meetings. And the last kind of part in this grid is just the contact information. I am asking that please update your contact information. If things have changed, you want to, make sure we know the new addresses, the new contact folks. All of that information should be updated every year at a minimum, so that we're all on the same page. And then this is just some keys for the different acronyms and language you're going to see in the survey, so that you know what a current bed means. So you know what a under development bed means. I will cover under development beds that were fully funded but not yet available for occupancy as of Wednesday, 2 days from now. That inventory needs to be listed as under construction, but it is only if, and we need to change that date. It is only if that inventory is expected to be available by January of the next year. So of 2023. And it really, and that's the caveat for under development. So you're not ready today, but between today and next year, you plan to be operating. Then you can still let us know, about your up and coming programs that you have. They are just under construction. And the key word here is that they are funded as of today, but you just haven't started. And we have a lot of projects like that. Some of them are building, some of them they haven't opened yet. Those are the ones that you will place as under construction. Okay. Let's see what else we have. We have target populations. If you're serving DV or folks with HIV and AIDS. You do have an opportunity to identify that. I also placed here, again, what to do when you're serving multiple household types within one program type as well. And then additional guidance for permanent housing projects, including SSBF, is just, again, really looking at actively enrolled in the project on the night of the count. And then making sure they, have a housing move-in date and are no longer homeless and are in permanent housing on the night of the count. And I gave the example previously, and that is only because many of you in permanent housing and Rapid have clients enrolled and have a project start date, but they are actively being served in an emergency shelter or transitional program that is already reporting on them. So that is the distinction between who to report when you are a permanent housing and Rapid program versus who the shelter or transitional housing is going to report. And that is why that distinction is made, because we don't want to duplicate the reporting. Okay, and then for BASH vouchers, we do collect the BASH voucher information as the night of the PIT, regardless of where the voucher is presently being used. We have typically gotten this information from MISTA, and Micah parses it and sends it to all of the independent jurisdictions. However, in Detroit, and I don't know if anyone is on this call, they have not entered all the BASH vouchers that we have in the city, but they have entered data on some. And so we are going to figure out a way to at least count those BASH vouchers in HMIS, though the others are not yet. BASH has been one of the areas that we have lost points in because they do not enter data in HMIS, and you get scored on the annual application, the big money application, the one that Amanda spearheads, if based on your HMIS coverage. So if your HMIS coverage is below a certain percentage, you just do not get those points on your HUD application, and they don't care. And you can, they give you an opportunity to explain why. And then when you get your score back, it's minus whatever the points were. So that is an area we have struggled in for years, and we are still, as you can see, struggling in it, but we are making waves, guys. We got BASH on board, and thanks to Dr. Curley and his team, they have started to enter data in HMIS. And so we are going to try to figure out that number and percentage so we can make sure that we get those points if we can, but at least we'll have, one step forward to trying to get those points for our CLC so we can continue to keep our money in Detroit. All right, and the last area that I'm going to cover here, and this is a big deal for us in Detroit. We've had a huge opportunity over the last year and a half. Started with EDP and later became Sarah. But prior to that, in 2021, SSVF started to use some of their funding for hotel motel. And so they were placing clients in hotel motel, which is also seen as emergency shelter. If the emergency shelter is being paid for by an agency, the hotel motel is being paid for by an agency, and the space is doubling as shelter, i.e. meaning the client is not able to resolve, their homelessness, or they're being funneled through our coordinated entry system for resources, then that bed is a homeless bed. We had the opportunity to bring on SSVF. So any SSVF providers as of January 26th, if you are holding folks or hoteling folks, you have been entering that data. And so we will gather that from your bins and go over those numbers with you. And we will be adding the Sarah projects that are doing hotel, motel in the same vein. So today they are not entering data. Sarah is not required for the Sarah program to enter data in HMIS, but the portion of the Sarah program that is providing hotel, motel, and the clients are not able to resolve their homelessness and are being funneled through our COCs, emergency shelter and CAM resources, will be counted as hotel, motel, and they will be entered into HMIS. And so those beds will be added to our inventory for 2022. And then it'll kind of be their kickoff. And so they'll have a very basic entry, the same as the SSVF. They will just need to account for clients as they move them into hotel, motel, and account for clients as they exit them from hotel, motel. And then report annually for the HIC and PIT as long as those projects are being funded. And so that is new for our COC. That is new for us, adding this additional resource and the two agencies that are managing those resources. And so we will be meeting with the Sarah projects this coming Monday, the 31st, at one of their meetings that they have to start to walk them through the process of onboarding those programs to HMIS. They have to do a full onboard, and then they have to start identifying the clients and then start getting the data entered in the system. And so we will be working on that from the 31st forward. We are also excited to mention that we have another non-HMIS provider that is also thinking about onboarding to HMIS. And so we'll continue to meet with that provider, and we will be onboarding them as well, potentially for this 2022 HIC and PIT year. So we got a lot going on. Any questions or concerns in relationship? And I know it's a lot of information. I know. Please understand that we share in this burden of a wealth of information that HUD is expecting, from our CLCs, in addition to managing an unsheltered PIT count at the same time. So we do know that it's a lot, and we do know that we're asking a lot of you and of your time to be dedicated, to this project. So please let me know at this time if you have any questions or concerns. Nona and Denise, if you see anything, let me know before we transition into the last section.
There is a question of whether the webinar recording will be available before Wednesday.
Denise, what are your thoughts on that? This is your baby.
My baby, no. No, I think we can send it out today with all of the resources that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, let's send it out today.
All right. So you have heard it.
We don't want to wait until the last minute because I know people will want a refresher. So, yeah.
Okay. So we will send this out with the other materials that we have promised you. And you can share this with the other staff that might be involved or have to be involved with helping you get your numbers straightened out. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Feel free to unmute yourself as well as type in the chat box. There are no wrong questions. There are no wrong questions and hopefully no wrong answers. And if we don't have an answer, we will circle back with you to get you the right answer. Anyone that's on the call right now have any burning questions or concerns in relationship to the information that you've received so far? Don't see anything or hear anything. Before we transition into our last segment, we do want to thank you all for attending. We are going into our non-HMIS data collection. And so we are needing that all DV providers, all joint THRRH DV providers, as well as any non-HMIS. I know we have the YWCA, Neighborhood Legal Services, and Team Wellness on the line. You are required to stay. The rest of you are invited to stay. However, if you can use this time back in your day, we are not making it mandatory for you to stay for this last portion to go over what to do if you are not entering data yet in HMIS. The SARA providers, this might be helpful for you in relationship to what you're going to need to get started. However, once you get started entering data, you will not be filling out forms or pulling together information in a form. But what this form will show you at least is the data elements that are going to be needed for the PIT count. And so all of those providers, please stay on. And the rest of you, again, we appreciate you. You are more than welcome to stay. Or you can take the option to sign off as we are done presenting the rest of the HIC and PIT orientation information at this time. All right, Nona?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So we're going to go over the PIT form for our DV providers and non-HMIS users at this time so that you become familiar. Right now, all agencies who do not enter data in HMIS must complete the form for each of their programs listed on the HIC. Again, this form needs to be completed for all clients that were served on the night of PIT at your emergency shelters and transitional housing. This form can be filled out electronically in Excel, as mentioned before, and sent back to me through email, or they can be completed by hand and faxed back to the number that's provided here, which will also be sent out to you after today's presentation. This form has to be completed and sent back to me no later than Monday, February 7th. So here's a copy of this year's PIT form for both non-HMIS users. And the next slide is a copy for DV providers. And there's a slight difference between the two, so we'll address that now. Next slide. So for both DV providers and non-HMIS providers, you'll want to make sure you complete a separate form for each emergency shelter or transitional housing program that your agency has listed on the HIC. You may make additional copies of the form if needed for one program, but be sure to indicate at the top of the page whether the project is, emergency shelter or transitional housing project. Include the name of your agency and the project name in the non-HMIS provider section up at the top here. And there should be an example too if you click. So for the DV agencies, personal identifying information as a person's name, their initials, info, date of birth should not be included on the data collection forms. Instead, DV providers are asked to record each head of household or single adult as anonymous 1, anonymous 2, so forth and so on in the last name column of the form, and to link any children properly to the anonymous clients. Use anonymous 1, child 1, anonymous 1, child 2, etc., where the last name is the same as their parents' naming mask and the first name is the child's number in the household. This way, the households are properly identified. DV providers are also asked to record the age of a client and any household members by using the age range code displayed here. On to next slide. For non-DV providers, you'll need to record each client and any household member's full first and last name, as well as their full date of birth. At a minimum, the year of birth is an absolute requirement. Now we'll go on to the excuse me, data collection codes that both DV and non-DV providers will be using to fill out the forms. Starting with relationship of household. You see here it says head of household or single. The code that you will record on the form would be self. Head of household for child would be C. Head of household for spouse would be S, so on and so forth. For household, the total number of household members would include the head of household. So if it is a household of one person and their spouse and 3 children, your total number will be 5. You can go on to the next slide. The same things for ethnicity, excuse me. There's single letter code for Hispanic. If not Hispanic, then N. If client doesn't know, DK, refuse, R, data not collected, DNC. For veteran status, enter a yes only if the client has served in active duty in the armed forces, and this does not include reserves or National Guard unless the person has been called upon active duty. If it is no, then please enter no. For disabling conditions, ask the clients if they've been diagnosed or received any treatment for a disability that is expected to be of long duration or substantially limits their ability to live on their own. Record a yes for this. In continuation with that question, for subpopulations, record an X in the box for any disorder or disability that they have reported. Here we're going on to the homeless history questions. For prior living situation, enter these codes for anything, for any situation that applies to the client you're interviewing at that time, and this would be for their current homeless situation. For length of stay in the previous place, enter the length of stay the individual has stayed in previous place, and we want this in total of months. For approximate date of homelessness, enter the date that they began their current episode of homelessness. So in this case, if they're in emergency shelter or transitional housing, it would be the date that they entered into that project. For the homeless episodes in the past 3 years, ask the client to look back over 3 years and ask them to tally up the total number of times they were homeless on the streets or in shelter or place not for human habitation. For total months homelessness, in the last 3 years, ask the client for the total number of months they've spent homeless on the streets, place not meant for habitation, or emergency shelter in the last 3 years. If the individual reports that they were homeless for 1 or more days in a given month, then that individual would be considered homeless for the entire duration of that time. So if they were homeless for, I don't know, random day in November, then from November until the night of pit, they would have been homeless. So giving them a total of 3 months homelessness. Go to the next slide. For domestic violence here, the question should be indicated as yes if the person reports any type of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or other dangerous or life-threatening conditions that relate to the violence. Otherwise, you'll enter no. The next field will say, if yes, when did this occur? You'll want to enter the number of months ago that the situation occurred. And then the next field, it'll say, if yes, currently fleeing. And if they are fleeing, then you'll write yes. Otherwise, you'll enter no. For all of the fields and data collection codes that we discussed, go back to the slides. If the client doesn't know, then you'll put DK. If they refused, then you'll put R. And if data isn't collected, put DNC. So this was an example of a completed form for the non-HMIS providers. See at the top, there is the date that the form was completed, as well as the name of the person who completed the form. And it's indicated that it is a non-HMIS emergency shelter with the project and agency name. Here is a copy of what domestic violence agencies form would probably look like. Again, the date and the name of the person who completed the form is at the top, along with the agency's name and project name. Again, there are no personal identifying markers here. Everything is listed as anonymous one with a child linked to that particular household. And I also want to bring attention to race. If your client reports multiple races, you should report their first race on the line with their other information, and on the second line under that, their second race that they report, and everything else in that line should be empty. Okay, so again, these instructions will be written out and sent to you via email after our presentation today. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out.
Hey, I don't see any questions. Let's see what we got in the chat here. Any of the non-HMIS providers have any specific questions or concerns right now at this time? We will be reaching out with you to you. I don't see. Let me see.
Oh, Kiana, I see one question from.
Okay.
This is Deandra Gorge, I think. Where can we send and submit updated contact information? Oh, okay. Nona answered it. You can send it through the help desk. Let's see.
Not seeing any other questions.
Hey. Well, if we don't have any other questions, this is unheard of, as we never end any meetings early. We thank you again for your time and for attending our orientation today. And we will give you some time back in your day. Thank you all and appreciate you and everything that you do for our CLC. And we will be